The Pentagon has officially released 3 short videos showing unidentified aerial phenomena. In other words, UFOs. We're not sure why anyone out there might want to pay Earth a visit right now, but here to give us the update on these mysterious objects is astronomer Seth Shostak. Seth Shostak directs the search for extraterrestrials at the SETI Institute in California, trying to find evidence of intelligent life in space. We already have enough unintelligent life down here, so hopefully we'll find something better, in another universe. Seth is also committed to getting the public, especially young people, excited about astrobiology and science in general. Seth, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Well, Juliana, I don't have to tell you, it's a total pleasure.
Thank you. So let's talk about these. First of all, let's talk about these videos that I can play a little bit later in the stream. There's a lot of explanations that have been offered. Some of people are saying they're autonomous vehicles like drones, friendly or otherwise. Others will say that the videos are solid proof that the ETs are here. What say you, my expert?
Well, I don't think that they're very good evidence for visitors from other parts of the galaxy, or for that matter, other parts of the universe. Let me simply back up just a moment and say SETI, which is where I work. I work at the SETI Institute. It's almost my name, SETI. And that stands for, as you've said, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So there may be life in space that's very nearby, under the surface of Mars or some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn. But this is the search for intelligent life that's, roughly as clever as the residents of, I don't know, Syosset, Long Island or something. Relatively intelligent. We do that the way it was done in the movie Contact. But these videos are something else. About 1/3 of the public thinks that we're kind of wasting our time because the aliens are already here. 1/3 of the public is convinced that at least some of these sorts of sightings are alien craft that have come to, just zip around our skies or occasionally haul people out of their bedrooms for experiments that their moms wouldn't approve of. So these Navy videos are part of that picture. And they were actually leaked. I mean, 3 years ago. They were actually shot much earlier than that. Some of them in, I think, 2005.
So they have been here for a long time, is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, if you consider that a long time, 15 years, the Earth's been here for 4.5 billion. So it's not really very long compared to the time over which they could have visited. But in any case,
any amount of time that happened before I got stuck in my Brooklyn apartment seems like a really long time ago. So
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, but what these videos show, for those who haven't seen them, and they were featured on the front page of the New York Times back in, I think, December of 2017. But, it's just one of the cameras on these fighter aircraft that the Navy has, these F-8 Hornets. And you see this little peanut-shaped thing moving around. And, for some people, that's incontrovertible proof of aliens in our midst.
Here, I will show a little bit, not the whole video, but I'll just show, some, in case you haven't seen this. Seth, if this isn't incontrovertible proof, what do we need for incontrovertible proof? Like you're in charge of the search for incontrovertible proof of intelligent life. What are you looking for? And here's what we've seen.
Okay. All right, well, let's watch this here video. Okay.
The National Enquirer was a spy network.
It brings us to Catch and Kill. This is about powerful people having the ability to silence.
Scandalous, May 17th at 10.
Oh, ridiculous.
At least you got the commercial in.
Thank goodness.
The National Enquirer was...
I don't know what happened. I must have touched something. Here it is. Let's go back. Okay. So here's the video.
It's rotating.
Now you see that black thing in the middle that looks like they've got turned into sort of white. But it's the one framed by the brackets. Most of what you're looking at is the display for the pilot of these cameras, what you're seeing. That black thing in the middle that's sort of twisting around.
This, but you can barely see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the object of interest. And that's what appeared. Now, there are a couple of things to be said about this. You notice it kind of twists, but it only twists when the camera twists. Kind of interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
What about, so, and we can't trust the reports of the Navy or Army or Air Force personnel who are saying, oh, it took off left and right.
Well, you can trust them. I mean, I don't think these people are lying. It has to be said that the people that made the most interesting reports were people who were known to their fellow Navy pilots to be very, very keen on UFOs. So they may have had, kind of a hound in this fight. But the point is, these things were seen only by infrared cameras that are affixed to a particular type of aircraft. In other words, a certain type of camera on a certain type of aircraft. Now, that's a little suspicious right there. I mean, if you drive through Central Park and you see, Bigfoot, but you're the only one who sees Bigfoot, and you take pictures, but only with a certain type of camera, you got to say, well, maybe the problem is with the camera or you, right? These guys say,
what do you make of the fact that these news stories, what's the point of releasing these news stories and then releasing them again 5 years later? And how does that affect the actual science that you're doing?
Well, I don't think it affects the science. Honestly, I don't. I mean, it certainly affects the inbox on my email account.
I guess that's what I meant more. So
I get lots and lots of people because I've written about this stuff, and people who think that the UFOs are actually alien craft, they're a little unhappy with me when I suggest that, well, maybe it's an artifact of the camera system, or maybe because these are infrared cameras. I should make that point. They're not looking the way your eyeballs look at something, visible light. They're looking at heat. And when you see something that looks like a little peanut there, what you're seeing is something that has double sources of heat. Now think about it. If there was a twin engine jet 5 miles in front of this plane, that you'd be looking up its tailpipes, and they're pretty hot. There's a hot gas coming out, and it would look just like what you see in the videos. So
when we're looking for extraterrestrial intelligence, what are you looking for?
Well, what we look for is not this, because this is ambiguous, right? It's not proof. It's like hearing chains in the attic, and you immediately say, Bob, there are ghosts. It goes, I heard these rattles in my attic. Well, I mean, it could be ghosts, could be raccoons. I mean, it's a little ambiguous.
I prefer ghosts. Raccoons are very frightening.
Those will at least leave you alone. You have to say the same about the aliens, by the way. If they really are visiting, as so many people believe, at least they don't kill anybody, and in good times they don't stop the traffic out of LaGuardia either. So I think that
yes, they're very
benign,
very nice, considerate.
Yes, they're incredibly benign. But what we do is rather different. We have these big antennas, and we try and eavesdrop on signals that might be coming from very far away. And if you find one, you can say, oh, well, I'm not going to believe that either. Why should I? And that's legitimate. But in science, what you can do is you can say, all right, I don't believe it either. We don't know what it is, but I tell you what, you guys over there in another country or whatever with a big antenna, you look. And if you find it too, then we'll have a third, party look at it. If you can verify it, with various installations, different kinds of equipment, and different people, then you begin to believe it.
So you've had a whole lifetime of not finding anything.
Well, I've had some other jobs. I don't know. I mean, weight guesser at Coney Island. That was pretty good. No, it's.
I'm not going to put that to the test.
It's
the camera adds 40 pounds.
It's not a lucrative position, but we have not yet found anything. On the other hand, unlike the UFO people, of course, we don't claim that we have.
Seth, here's a question. On your bio, it says that you work hard to get young people interested in science. What is it going to take to get more people going into science these days?
Well, look, it's getting them when they are quite young, and getting them, it makes it sound like some sort of, I don't know, malevolent
cigarette ad.
Yeah.
Science, it's good.
It's good, right? Exactly. And for some people, they're already interested. I mean, I find a lot of kids are interested.
Kids feel like they're all interested.
They are.
Like if kids are interested in the world, they're interested in
Well, science gives you explanations for things, and that's a good thing, and it also makes predictions. That's great. That was the great thing about the early astronomers, right? They could predict where the planet was going to be 3 weeks from now on the sky, and that was kind of magic back then. Anyhow, kids get interested in something between 8 and 11, I think, and if you can, stimulate any interest they may have in science, I think that's only good.
8? Okay, so I have 4 more years with my daughter to, I am married to a scientist, as you know, so she already plays scientist.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she
yeah.
doesn't play media, queen. That we haven't played that game yet. So we'll see what happens. Seth, what are you working on these days? Are you still doing the podcast? I've sort of lost track a little bit.
Yeah, we have a radio show called Big Picture Science.
Yeah. It's not just a podcast anymore?
No, I don't think it ever was, actually. We were on
Oh,
stations before it was a podcast, actually.
really?
Yeah, there's actually even a station in New York. But it's
Really? God. Well,
yeah,
okay.
but it's 1 hour of science every week, and it's radio. It's not, it's not television. So it's slightly different in terms of the format. But we've been doing a bunch of shows, of course, about the virus. But we handle things like artificial intelligence. Is it going to take over? How long do you have before a machine?
It's already taken over.
Yeah.
Alexa's listening to us right now, and she's going to try to sell me some UFO glasses.
Well, tinfoil hats are good. I think
I already have those.
I think there's a real issue here because artificial intelligence today is it's useful in industry, and Alexa is an example. But Alexa's not going to take over the house. Alexa's not going to start writing, should I say, Broadway plays, right? It isn't going to do that. But in 50 years, maybe it will. Its descendants will. And that's
what's the role for humans once AI takes over?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think anybody knows. Maybe we become their pets, and I'm not against that because you get fed regularly and you get walked. So
unless you have a shitty, AI. What if you have maybe they'll all be programmed to be nice? I doubt it.
I think they eventually, in the beginning, they'll be programmed to be nice because we're programming them. But once they get to the point where they program themselves, they'll do whatever they find interesting, and it may not have much to do with humans.
Oh, good Lord. That is frightening. Do we have, are we more likely to all die from this or another pandemic or the ravages of climate change before the AI revolution comes to get us? Or what's first?
Well, I tell you, I was talking with a millennial about, 6 months ago, and he was saying, it's all worthless because we're just going to do ourselves in pretty soon. And I sort of on the back of a napkin, I wrote down, 4 or 5 things that I thought were threats. Pandemics was one of them. You can look at the worst pandemics, the Black Plague, obviously the 1918 Spanish flu, the current pandemic. I don't mean to belittle pandemics. Pandemics are terrible things, but they don't wipe out humanity, right? They might wipe out 1%, maybe. So
that's 50% in the Black Plague of not humanity, but like the population of Europe.
Yeah, it was somewhere between 30 and 50%. That's right.
Who counts outside of Europe? I'm sorry.
From the European perspective, nobody. But the facts are, in terms of the total population, it really was a minuscule effect. Climate change is going to kill people, that's for sure. And there are estimates, but again, it's sort of like the plague. I mean, it's a small percentage of the population. The only thing actually that made a big difference in the population is if you unleashed all the nuclear weapons and if you aimed them strategically to kill as many people as possible. The biggest weapon goes to the first biggest city, and the second weapon goes to the second biggest city, and so forth. And I worked that out, and you would have nuked every city down to the size of Racine, Wisconsin, right? And if Racine has always been sort of on your radar as something that needs to be eliminated. So, you did all that, and the bombs were completely 100% effective. And, Hiroshima, we killed like 30%, not 100, but whatever. If you do all that, then you get rid of about a third of all humans. But only a third.
What about the fracking in the Yellowstone super volcano? That's a question coming in from our chat.
Well, what about it? I mean,
bad idea? Or
well, if you live in Wyoming, it's a bad idea, maybe. but fracking has not, as far as I know, killed anyone. It's certainly not.
Well, it has, because it poisons your water.
Well,
So
it may poison your water, but I mean, that's like saying, what about the lead in the water in Flint? I mean, it's not a good
that
thing.
kills you.
But if you're looking at it from a global perspective, these are all, local disasters.
Well, people talk about that giant super volcano in Yellowstone as something that could be, like the volcanoes that may have ended the dinosaurs or whatever. They think.
Yeah,
there's
well, the dinosaurs were, I mean, you can't say with 100% certainty, but the dinosaurs were not wiped out by volcanoes, even though there were a lot of volcanoes at about that time, mostly in places like India, but they were wiped out by a rock about, the size of New York City. Okay.
So that could be the one that gets us.
Yeah, that could take us all out.
So you've got like the personal, where like you and your family might die of the Black Plague, but that's not going to end humanity. But then you've got, the big humanity ending things have to be something from the sky. Hey, here's a question for you. Does SETI know if some giant rock is coming our way?
Well, SETI, we don't look at that terribly much. There's one guy there who's interested in meteors, but those are small rocks. If you're talking about a rock, it has to be at least a couple of miles in size to be an existential threat, as they like to say, because people like Latin and all. It's and there aren't that many of the big rocks flying around. There gazillions of rocks flying around the solar system. But the number of big ones is just like, how many people are over 6'5". I mean, it's a small percent of the population. Same with the big rocks. So NASA does have a program to kind of map out all the big rocks. And they've got, anything the size of half a mile or larger, they've got most of them mapped, and they know if something's going to hit us. But you could have something the size of, a cheap motel. We don't know about all of those. There's so many that we haven't mapped all of those. One of those could land tomorrow, and if it did, it might wipe out Newark, right? I mean,
that's very close to here, Newark.
Yeah,
pick something that I can't relate to.
Well, if you lived in Newark, it would all be over rather quickly. But the really bigger rocks are a real danger, but they're very infrequent now. Tens of millions of years between one and the next, and by the time that we see one coming our way, we'll probably have a way to deflect it.
Here's a question from the chat. I don't know really exactly what this question is about. Maybe it's from a scientist to a scientist, or maybe it's a joke. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to pose it to you, okay? Topic question. Do you think it's more likely that UFOs are artificially intelligent alien life visiting Earth to probe signals from our technology than biological aliens abducting farmers? And how do we search for artificial aliens?
Well, it's hard to tell the nature of these guys when you're not even sure whether these reports, and remember, there are like 10,000 reports every year. Those are the people who take the trouble to actually report these things. I'm sure the number of people who see something is probably 10 times that number. I get, emails and phone calls every day from people who have seen something, but they don't know what's in these UFOs, right? They don't see portholes with little green guys, faces behind them.
Some people do.
That, yes, that does occur. But, then at least you would say, oh, well, they're alive. But, think about it. We're busy this century inventing our successors, and they won't be metabolic, and it would be soft, squishy protoplasm. That's so old school. So I figure the aliens won't be either.
So since so many people, 10,000, as you said, reports every year, was that the figure?
That's in the U.S. alone.
In the U.S. alone. So has SETI come into contact with, UFOs that can't be identified?
Well, we don't even look for UFOs. We're looking for signals. Personally, I don't think that there was.
In your time, you got to look for UFOs.
Yeah, a lot of people say that to me every day. They say, you guys ought to check this out. Look, that requires a completely different skill set, if you will, to investigate these. And in fact, it's been done, and it's been done, and it's been done. The federal government, particularly the Air Force, was very interested in these things beginning in about 1950, a long time ago, because there were these reports, Roswell and all that stuff. And I don't know whether the Air Force ever thought that they were aliens, but they thought they might be Russian aircraft, and they wanted to know what they were. So they spent a lot of time. They got a lot of, very smart people together to investigate these things. And they decided in every case, and they did this over and over, in every case, after a couple of years, they said, well, there's nothing here terribly interesting to us because it's not Russian aircraft. It's, it's something, but it's probably birds or balloons or, there are all sorts of other things it could be. And they figured it wasn't worth the money to track them down because they weren't learning anything.
Another question coming in from our stream chat from Pop. Do you believe the evolution of humans has been in any way influenced by alien life? Any thought on the so-called evidence shown in artwork by ancient civilizations, or for that matter, modern crop circles?
Yeah, modern crop circles I find rather appealing. They're certainly artistic. They're mostly done by, admittedly done by art collectives in the UK, mostly in Hampshire and Wiltshire. For some reason, if they were aliens, they don't want to visit Nebraska. They want to visit Hampshire and Wiltshire. It's a very strange way to leave a message, put it that way, a crop circle.
Well, maybe they don't speak German.
Well, why don't they just drop a thumb drive? You can get, billions of times more information onto a thumb drive.
Then you wouldn't believe that either. You'd be like, well, why didn't you put it in a crop circle?
The idea that they'd come all this way just to carve graffiti in our wheat. I mean, that does seem a little unreasonable. But, the other thing, I mean, I think the fundament of the question is, very reasonable. Why are they coming now? What are they here for? Why did they come here? And the answer to that is, we don't know, but the answer to that is, A, they're not here, which is, the way
possibly be here to save us from Trump.
Yeah. The idea that they're interested in what we do.
Hurry up.
Is that it's pretty akin to my going into the backyard and, separating all the ants. No more wars here. I'm on this guy's side over here, but not you guys. I'm sure they have no interest. Not only that, but they don't even know about it. If they're more than 50 light years away, they don't even know about any of this stuff because they haven't yet received the radio and television signals that would tell them what's going on here.
Okay, I have other good questions coming in. Here you go. Where is that one? Question about Tabby's Star. Any new data?
Well, there are new data. Tabby Star, for those who are not, conversant with Tabby Star, for people who have not had to deal with it at their cocktail parties, let me just say that Tabby Star, it actually has a, catalog number, but it was found by this woman who at the time was working at Yale, Tabitha. It was her first name, so it's called Tabby Star. Anyhow, it's a star that occasionally gets dim, and then, it goes back to being a bright star, and then it goes dim. And now, there are stars that get dimmer and brighter. Our own sun gets a little bit dimmer when there are sunspots, but not very much. It's 1 part in 10.
Oh my God, sunspots, aliens. This video is gonna be huge on the internet.
It might be. Maybe the aliens will download it. But this star did dim by like 22% once, and that's a lot. So, the thought was, oh, well, that's because there's a planet around it, and the planet occasionally blocks the sunlight. But that's much too much. Even, you take a Jupiter planet, it might block it by 1%, not 22%. And so a fellow at Penn State University said, well, you know what it could be? The aliens have built a giant, what's called a Dyson sphere, but they built something big, a big structure, because they're millions of years more advanced than we are. They build this big structure and occasionally gets in the way of the star and dims the sunlight. That would be really neat. And it's not impossible, but it turns out that the evidence, I mean, we continue to look at that star system. We don't see any radio signals coming from it. Well, okay. But the main point is that the dimming, when it gets dim, it gets a little redder. And that is usually an indication that what's doing the dimming is dust, not alien, mechanical constructions.
All right, just here's a comment that I want to point out because we have geniuses in our audience. Next Bike One says the distance between stars makes space travel impossible given known physics. They would have had to known about Trump a million years ago.
Well, I mean, that's a good point that, it doesn't violate physics actually to go from one star to the other. Physics doesn't say you can't do it. What might say you can't do it is that if you're using rockets like we have, it takes a long time. I mean, our best rockets go like 7 or 8 miles per second, right? And that's fine if you're going to the Jersey Shore. Well, you might ask why, but so that's
closed. Okay. You can't go.
But 7 or 8 miles a second, I mean, you get to the moon in a day or two, whatever. But if you want to go to the nearest star at that speed, indeed, it does take 75,000 years. And that's kind of daunting. I mean, you could do it, but by the time you get there, you're going to be out of pretzels and, you're going to get tired of the middle seat. So, that's just not on. And you can say, okay, we'll just build a faster rocket, which is, of course, what you would do. But then you do run into some physics problems in that, yes, you can build a faster rocket and get there, whatever time you like in terms of your own time, anyhow. But now the amount of energy you need for the rocket goes rocketing up, and it becomes very difficult. So we can't go to the stars, no. But to say that nobody could go to the stars is probably incorrect. I mean,
you're really something. I mean, I am married to a scientist, and he always tries to explain my jokes. Like, he not explain them, but he answers them as if the joke is not a joke, but it's a question, or it requires a scientist with a great sense of humor is really something. I love it. And everyone in the chat seems to be having a good time here. We have another question for you. If you, where's that one? Oh, here it is. Political Puppy asks, apparently we are spreading out and becoming more distant from other solar systems. Is the increasing distance making contact less and less likely?
Yeah, well, I think everybody knows that the universe is expanding, just like my waistline. The universe is expanding. That was figured out by Hubble, right back in 1923, I think it was. Okay, but not within a galaxy. I mean, I think that Woody Allen once said, in connection with the expanding universe, he was worried that Brooklyn might be expanding, but it isn't, because Brooklyn is held in place by local gravity. In our own galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, a couple of 100 billion star systems, it's all held together by the gravity of those stars. It is not expanding. So it doesn't make it harder to go to the stars. It does make it harder if where you want to go is, 10 galaxies over. Those are moving away from you at the speed, well, it depends, but the speed of maybe 100 miles a second or something. So yeah, don't worry about going to other stars. That's all possible. If you're planning to go to another star system this weekend, don't cancel your plans.
You're not allowed off the Earth because we're all quarantined. Okay, so here's a question from John Zook. Isn't it possible that aliens have a different technology other than radio that maybe we can't detect yet? And how does SETI deal with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, John has a point. I mean, we don't know what, 100 years ago, when people were talking about trying to find evidence for aliens, they would say, well, we'll look for canals on Mars and so forth. It never occurred to them that they might be using radio, because they didn't have radio. So it's a legitimate point. Unfortunately, I mean, it depends on how complete our physics is, actually. If we know enough of the physics that rules the universe to say, look, these are the only ways to send bits of information from one star system to another. So you got to either use light or radio. Those are basically the same thing, or send particles, or send FedEx or something. I mean, okay, then maybe we know what they're doing. But you can't gainsay the possibility that there's something we don't know about that they are using that's much better, that's faster somehow. But on the other hand, from the practical point of view, if you take that attitude, you say, well, there are some things we don't know about, and that's what the aliens are using. Then what do? Do you sit around and watch, television all day? I mean,
Oh, that's what we're doing anyway. So yeah.
kind of stops you.
Okay, so here's a question from the chat. And by the way, the people in our chat on our Twitch channel are super smart. They're totally having a great time with you, and they're thrilled that you're here. So I'm just putting that to you because I know you can't read it from where you are. Here's a question from the Battle Lounge. Julianna, can you ask what Seth's preferred solution to the Fermi Paradox is? And you may have to explain slightly what that is to...
Fermi Paradox, it's named after Fermi. And Fermi was kind of an Italian-American physicist. Can't say that early in the morning. Enrico Fermi. Look him up if you don't know who he is.
I know him. I'm Italian.
Okay. Then
we all know each other. We have meetings.
Well, the Italians are very clever. You know that. Anyhow, he was having, I think he was at Los Alamos when this supposedly happened. And he was just having lunch with a couple of other physicists. And between two bites of his sandwich, he said, so where is everybody? And, he wasn't referring to the fact that there weren't any other people at the lunch. What he had done is just in his mind very quickly worked out, well, how long would it take to colonize the entire Milky Way galaxy. And it turns out, it's 30, 40 million years. I mean, it depends a little on how fast your rockets are and some other things. But 30 or 40 million years is a long time if you're waiting for the subway. But 30 or 40 million years isn't long compared to the age of the universe. So if anybody was interested in doing this, they should have done it by now. There should be aliens everywhere. There should be an empire. It would be like living in Europe in 200 AD. There'd be Romans essentially everywhere. Okay, so that was his question. And the Fermi Paradox is, you say there are aliens all over the place, and we don't see any aliens, and they should be everywhere. That's the paradox. And nobody knows what the answer to that is, but there are a lot of, there are entire books devoted to trying to figure out what the answers might be. One thing you could think about is that maybe the galaxy is kind of urbanized, right? That there's some parts of the galaxy that are a lot more interesting than others, just like there are in any country, right? You can live outside of Paris and France, but maybe it's not as exciting. So it could be that we're in the, kind of the rural, uninteresting parts of the galaxy, but nobody knows.
Big Picture Science. That is your radio show. It's available wherever people talking can be found. Seth Shostak, final. Can you please come back like once a month so we can talk about science? We mostly talk about politics here, but I'm having a great time.
Oh, Julianna, you know that I'm more than happy to do that.
All right. And I put you like right on the spot in front of like the whole audience. No, you can't be like, no, I don't like you. This hasn't been fun. Final question, Julianna. Okay, we will only see the objects in our, that's for me. Okay, that we're anyway, everyone is thanking you. Seth Shostak, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe because we have a lot of awesome guests here on the act.tv YouTube channel, including the guest that we have just been speaking with. I would say my friend, yes? Who you can follow on Twitter at Seth Shostak, Shostak. His podcast and radio show is Big Picture Science. He is the director of the Search for Extraterrestrials at the SETI Institute in California. Seth, I look forward to our next chat.
Thank you very much, Julia.
Thank you so much.